Can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will?
Hey y'all, welcome back. My name's Katie, this is Dark Side of the Truth, and we're now friends.
Did we just become best friends? Yup!
If you still believe the internet always tells the whole story, you might want to sit down for this one. Because as we've learned here on this channel, majority of the times when you go down these rabbit holes, the truth is much darker than you might expect. So let me warn you, this one is going to get intense. Just stick with me, and I promise we'll get through it together. You've probably seen this viral claim floating around lately that there are like declassified government documents proving that the government tried to give people superpowers. And according to the internet version of this theory, there are basically 3 ways that you can get superpowers. Number 1, you're born with them. Number 2, you train your mind, like monk style. I'm talking meditation to like unlock parts of your brain that most people don't access. And number 3, the government can try to artificially unlock these abilities in certain people. Not only that they can, but that they have tried to. And according to the theory, it went horribly wrong. And here's the thing, y'all. That claim isn't like entirely wrong. There are declassified documents, and those documents are what people are pointing to when they talk about this theory. But the way that this story gets told online is not really consistent with reality. Because as much as I hate to admit it, reality is sometimes far darker than fiction. And sometimes the truth is much stranger than the version that goes viral. So in this video, we're going to slow this way down. We're going to look at the actual declassified documents that people are referencing. We're going to talk about where this theory comes from. And then we're going to peel back the layers and look at what actually happened. Not to mock anyone and not to like dismiss their curiosity, but to figure out whether this viral theory is accurate. And if not, why it exists in the first place. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. Everything in this video comes from declassified government documents, official reports, and verified historical records. We're not spreading misinformation, and we're not making anything up. My goal is to take you through the actual facts and then show you how the viral theory compares. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. Roll the intro.
They live, we sleep, the alarms going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
There's a viral claim that circulates online over and over again, that the US government experimented with human consciousness, and that some of those experiments were attempts to unlock extraordinary abilities in people. Things that usually get simplified into quote-unquote superpowers, such as heightened perception, remote viewing, altered states of awareness, even interactions with reality itself. Before we can evaluate whether that claim holds any weight, we have to first answer a question that's a little bit more uncomfortable. That question being, why would anyone believe that their government would even attempt something like this in the first place? Because this idea didn't just come out of nowhere. It came from documented history. It proves something else entirely, that ethical lines were crossed, that secrecy was prioritized over human life, and that the government has already shown that it is willing to experiment first and explain later, if it explains ever. Only once you understand that context does the second part of this story even begin to make sense. Because separate from MKUltra, and often confused with it online, if I'm being frank, is a different program entirely. One that wasn't about breaking minds, but about exploring consciousness itself. A program rooted in altered states, perception, and what the mind might be capable of under the right conditions. Now that program was called the gateway process. And if MKUltra explains why people are suspicious, the gateway process explains where the modern claims actually come from. So that's what this video is about. Not just what's rumored online, but how documented history, classified research, and human curiosity collided, and why the question never really went away. But before we can even touch on whether or not that claim is true, we have to answer a different question first. Why do people believe that the government would even attempt something like this in the first place? Because if you don't understand the history, then the theory sounds insane. Once you do, though, it stops sounding so impossible. Starting back in the 1950s and 60s, the US government ran a series of psychological research programs. Thousands of documents from these experiments were eventually declassified, and when you read them, they're full of phrases like altered states of consciousness, expanded awareness, or perceptual changes. Now, when someone sees that language today, especially with like the full reports, it sounds like they were trying to unlock hidden abilities. But those terms weren't describing superpowers. They were clinical ways of describing how the human mind reacts to stress, substances, deprivation, or extreme conditions. The most infamous government program tied to this theory is, of course, MKUltra. And yeah, it's been dramatized a lot. But the reality is darker and more grounded. The CIA wasn't trying to make people fly or like read minds, at least not officially. They were trying to figure out if they could control, manipulate, or break the human psyche. They used LSD, often without consent, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, even electroshock therapy. The goal wasn't enhancement, y'all. It was obedience, compliance, and psychological vulnerability. And the damage was real. People suffered severe mental breakdowns, lifelong trauma, institutionalization, and, in at least one known case, death. But here's some context that usually gets lost. Officially, all of this was framed as research. On paper, the goals sounded clinical, even reasonable. They said they were studying human consciousness, how stress affects the brain, how perception can be altered, whether behavior could be influenced or controlled. And the context matters here. This was the Cold War times, after all, and fear drove everything. There was a real concern that other countries might already be experimenting with the human mind. And if they were, the US didn't want to fall behind. So the justification became national security. Whether they knew other countries were, practicing in this or not. They just assumed, well, if we're sick enough to consider this, then maybe other countries were sick enough to consider this, and maybe they've already, perfected it. So guess we better get on our sickness. It's actually very messed up. That's just my opinion. So they justified it as national security. And when you read the document straight through, it doesn't sound like sci-fi. It sounds like a search for limits. Like, how much can a person endure? How flexible is the human mind? Where does it break? How much can they take? It's sick. And all experimented on unwilling, unknowing, they didn't sign up for this, participants. On paper, again, it looks like research. But here's the part that usually gets left out. These programs weren't about enhancement. They weren't about evolution. They weren't about creating superhumans. They were about control, observation, and pushing people past their limits, often without consent, just to see what would happen. Just for fucking shiggles. Just because we're bored. Other countries might be doing this, so guess we better get to it. Oh my gosh.
MKUltra was a real thing. Mm-hmm. Most of the documents were destroyed. That's right. By Director Helms in violation of the law. Right. But even with all the documents destroyed, we still have a pretty darn good idea of what MKUltra was. And pretty much every facet of it was illegal. It was extensive experimentation on American citizens without their knowledge and without their consent, to the point where under something called MK-Chickwit, which was a subset of MKUltra, the CIA actually weaponized a virus that they blew into the San Francisco fog just to see if people would get sick. And this was in the late 1950s. And 11 people came down with this rare urinary tract infection that doctors had never seen before. And so that was a success. That made them think, oh yeah, we can weaponize this. And, maybe we blow this in Shanghai Harbor or in Moscow in the summertime.
Now, Tyrone style, y'all. How they were putting it in the chicken at the chicken place? Yeah, like that. Bars, offices, military settings, hospitals. People weren't pulled aside and informed. They weren't asked. They didn't consent.
MKUltra mind fragmentation is one of the most disturbing chapters in documented psychological experimentation. This wasn't science fiction or conspiracy theory, but a real Central Intelligence Agency program that ran from 1953 to 1973. The fragmentation technique aimed to completely shatter a person's existing personality and memories, creating what researchers called a blank slate for reprogramming. Dr. Ewan Cameron at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal became the primary architect of these methods, using a combination he termed psychic driving. Cameron's patients, many seeking treatment for minor conditions like anxiety or depression, were subjected to massive electroshock treatments up to 40 times the normal intensity. He would then play recorded messages on loop for weeks, sometimes months, while patients remained in drug-induced comas. The goal was to erase their existing personalities entirely. One documented case involved a woman named Linda McDonald, who entered the hospital for mild postpartum depression. After Cameron's treatment, she couldn't recognize her husband or children, had lost 25 years of memories, and needed to relearn basic functions like using a toilet. The fragmentation process relied on overwhelming the mind's natural defenses through sensory deprivation, extreme stress, and chemical disruption. Patients were kept in isolation chambers, given powerful hallucinogens like lysergic acid diethylamide, and subjected to extreme temperature variations. What makes this particularly chilling is the meticulous documentation. The CIA kept detailed records, tracking which combinations of electricity, and psychological pressure produced the most complete personality breakdown. They measured success by how thoroughly they could eliminate a person's sense of self. The program only came to light in 1975 when congressional investigations revealed thousands of pages of previously classified documents. Many victims never recovered their original personalities, remaining permanently altered by these experiments conducted in the name of national security.
MKUltra was a program that started in the early 1950s. We were doing things like, what would happen if we gave people LSD and they didn't know it? Well, I'll tell you what happens. They start jumping out of windows and off of roofs of buildings and committing. They're like, that didn't work. Why don't we hire... We'll have them pick up Johns. We'll bring the Johns back to a safe house that we control. We'll dose them with LSD. We'll tie them up and interrogate them and see if they'll tell us their deepest secrets. No, they just went nuts. That's all that happened. Then they said, how about if we come up with a germ and we spread the germ all around San Francisco and see if people get sick? So they came up with this germ. They waited until a really foggy day when the air is very heavy and it sits on the ground. And within days, 11 people went to hospital emergency rooms with this rare strain of upper respiratory infection. We're like, hey, now we can do that in Havana, in Moscow, in East Berlin. But none of this led to reading minds or Manchurian candidates. None of it worked, but it was brutal. And we made people insane. We made people commit. We split families. This was monstrous.
And how perception and behavior could be influenced. In theory, it was about protection, about staying ahead during the Cold War, about national security. But intent on paper doesn't erase impact in reality. Because when you strip away the language, the classifications, and the justifications, what was happening to actual human beings looked nothing like research.
Then they also did experimentations to using different chemicals to see if you can induce a person to commit a crime or induce him to do that or to do this. Of course, the CIA claimed that it didn't carry it through. The documentation we got was actually that they did that. Then we came across the overall project called MKUltra. Its earlier code name was Artichoke, and that included 149 sub-projects. 149? Yeah. And those sub-projects range from what I just described to open-air testing in the United States, experimentation on prisoners, experimentation on soldiers, experimentation on college students.
Would these people know they were being experimented on and gave their approval?
No, except for the quote-unquote volunteer voluntary Army soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And the way the voluntary Army program worked is it started in 1959, and the guys were just told that they would be doing experimentation on new weapons.
It was so hard to come running out of a hell that nobody believed existed. My name is Kathy O'Brien, and I'm a survivor of MKUltra mind control. The MKUltra program was to ultimately control the minds of the population for implementing what Adolf Hitler first termed the New World Order. When girls reached age 30, they were sacrificed. I was going to be as well. I was to go out in a blaze of glory and be burned. I'm so fortunate that an intelligence insider who saw the kind of corruption that was going on in the highest levels of government decided to take action and rescued me and saved my life so that we could begin to expose what was being done.
Between the years of 1957 and 1984, I became a pawn in a government scheme whose ultimate goal was mind control and to create the perfect spy, all through the use of chemicals, radiation, hypnosis, electric shock, isolation in tubs of water, sleep deprivation, brainwashing, verbal, physical, emotional, and abuse. I was exploited unwittingly for nearly 3 decades of my life, and the only explanations given to me were that, quote, the end justifies the means, and, quote, I was serving my country in their bold effort to fight communism. I can only summarize my circumstances by saying they took an already abused 7-year-old child and compounded my suffering beyond belief. The saddest part is, I know for a fact that I was not alone. There were countless other children in my same situation, and there was no one to help us, until now. I've already submitted as much information as possible, including conversations overheard of agencies responsible. I'm able to report all this to you in such detail because of my photographic memory and the arrogance of the people involved. They were certain they would always control my mind. Although the process of recalling these atrocities is not an easy one, nor is it without some danger to myself and my family, I feel the risk is worth taking. Dr. L. Wilson Green once described to Dr. Charles Brown that, quote, children were used as subjects because they were more fun to work with and cheaper, too. They needed lower profile subjects than soldiers or government people. So only young, willing females would do. Besides, he said, I like scaring them. They and the agency think I'm a god, creating subjects' experiments for whatever deviant purposes Sid and James can think up.
What the government actually didn't match the language. On paper, it was called testing, national security. In reality, it looked nothing like that. People were exposed to extreme psychological stress, and not in like short bursts. This wasn't a single bad day in the lab. This was sustained, intentional pressure meant to overload the human mind. Mind-altering substances were used without consent, sometimes without warning, sometimes repeatedly, and often without the person ever knowing why they suddenly felt different, or if it would ever stop. No wonder they had psychological breaks. Could you imagine? Like, you're just sitting in your house chilling one day and you're totally fine. You get up and make a pot of coffee and all of a sudden you're tripping on LSD, but you don't know why. Yeah, you'd think you're fucking crazy. Like, what? This is actually sick. I know we've all heard about MKUltra before, but I'm sorry, I had to. Like, I had to, because like when you actually slow down and read these documents, it's sick. Like, it's sick. Subjects were isolated, confused, and disoriented. And I don't mean just like locked in rooms, although that did happen. I mean cut off from anything familiar, from people that they trusted, from routines that anchored their sense of self, when like that was all they had left because literally their mind is forcefully being turned against them. Some of them were still living their normal lives on the surface, going to work, seeing friends, and just trying to function. And that was the point, because the goal wasn't just to see how someone reacts in a controlled room. It was to see what happens when a human starts unraveling while trying to act normal and keep it all together. There were no safeguards, no meaningful oversight, no independent voice stepping in when things went too far, and no aftercare. When the experiments ended, responsibility ended with them. Broken minds weren't treated, y'all. They were abandoned. No accountability. Files were classified. Names were erased. And consequences were buried. When people broke, the system didn't stop. It didn't even care. Their reactions weren't treated as warning signs. They were treated as results. They were written off, labeled unstable, and dismissed as collateral damage. It literally makes me sick. And this is where reality becomes far worse than the conspiracy. Because this wasn't about unlocking hidden human potential. And there was no plan to help these people afterwards. No interest in what came next for them and how these experiments would affect them throughout the rest of their life. Nobody cared. It was simply about how much damage the human mind could take before it collapsed. They really wanted to know where that breaking point was and what failed first. What part of your mind failed first. How far your mind could be pushed. And for many of them, I would say majority of them, the damage didn't stop when the experiments stopped. We're talking long-term paranoia, severe anxiety, depression, memory loss, psychotic breaks, a complete loss of trust, not just in institutions, but in other people. Imagine that. You wouldn't be able to trust anybody. You wouldn't be able to trust yourself. It's sick. Their bodies paid the price too. Chronic insomnia, stress-related illness, nervous system stuck in survival mode for years. And then there's the part that's the hardest to quantify. The part people don't like talking about, and I don't blame them. The soul damage, because that's a big one. People later described feeling hollow and disconnected from who they used to be. Something essential was taken from them and never returned. Because when your reality is manipulated, when your suffering is treated as data, and no one even tells you why, it doesn't just break your mind. It changes who you are.
Then they started MKUltra, which involved a lot of former Nazi scientists. And involved a lot of LSD and dosing people with massive, massive doses of LSD and ruining a lot of people's lives in the process. But it was an attempt initially to find some kind of a truth serum. And actually the Navy participated in the biggest one, which was called Project Chatter, which is a sub-project of MKUltra. And with this guy, he's a professor at... it's in Hamilton, New York. I can't remember the name of the Colgate University. His name's Dr. George Estabrooks. And he and J. Edgar Hoover are collaborating on a plan to use hypnosis to capture and hypnotize a German submarine captain and give him alter identities. And send him back to his fleet in Germany and have him torpedo the entire German fleet inside the harbor.
Now, regarding this topic, there is one other theory that always comes up when people talk about MKUltra, and I wanted to touch on that directly. The theory goes that MKUltra never ended. It just simply evolved. That it didn't need a program name anymore, or paperwork, secret funding lines, or even classified memos stamped as top secret. Instead of isolated experiments, it became something ambient, something that people live inside of every day. The theory goes on to say that we are all the test subjects now, not dragged into labs because that was never really how it worked to begin with. Regular civilians were always the test subjects. Bars, offices, schools, military bases, hospitals, and homes were always the stomping grounds. So, if it were still happening today, it wouldn't look dramatic. It would look normal. Screens in every room of our homes, phones that never leave our hands, algorithms that learn how to hold attention, trigger emotion, shape beliefs, reinforce fear, reward outrage, and suppress nuance. Constant psychological pressure, endless notifications, a 24/7 information stream engineered to hijack focus, shorten attention spans, and keep people emotionally reactive instead of reflective. What we consume mentally, what we consume emotionally, and what we consume culturally has all been specifically engineered to work against us, not for us. This part of the theory points to how narratives repeat until they feel like the truth, how fear spreads faster than facts, how division is amplified and unity is buried, and how people can be nudged, not forced, but guided without even realizing that they are being guided. And no, this isn't necessarily about everyone secretly being dosed with LSD, because it doesn't really have to be. MKUltra already proved something far more important than any other drug experiment ever has, like in all of history. That institutions are willing to manipulate perception, push psychological limits, and experiment on human minds without consent, and then lie about it afterwards, only to admit the truth decades later once no one responsible can be held accountable. Convenient. So when people look at modern society through this same lens, they start noticing things like nonstop stimulation, engineered outrage, addiction-driven platforms, and behavioral algorithms designed to keep attention locked in. And they don't see something random. They see systems that study human behavior in real time. They see populations being A/B tested. They see emotional responses measured, nudged, amplified, or even suppressed. They see stress, fear, dopamine, anger, and isolation all tracked, monetized, and optimized, not to help people, but to influence them.
MKUltra never ended. It just got smarter. MKUltra used to wire your brain with trauma. Now AI wires it with dopamine. Your For You page isn't random. It's precision-engineered emotional control. They don't need to control your body when they already have your mind. Today, they don't need chemicals. They have algorithms. Every scroll, every click, every pause feeds a system that knows what breaks you. It doesn't just predict your behavior. It shapes it.
I am 99.999% sure that I'm being targeted by three-letter organizations, alphabet agencies, via social media. And I'm not in psychosis, I'm not manic, but why does my feed look like this? Like, does anybody, why does my feed look like this?
That's why it's voices, static, or repetition bands, or in other words, they are initialization bands. Each serves how it's neurostatic.
You know, is it cute? Dozens of casualties are being reported here at the manufacturing. The cluster of the units are broken. This national swim. People keep asking.
We don't know if this message will reach you before the distortion takes over, but if you're hearing this and things already feel strange, you need to watch.
If you're hearing this, it means a resonant frequency has been met. We've spoken of the amnesia protocol, the great forgetting, the veil drawn across.
MKUltra created TikTok. Hear me out. This is my theory. MKUltra has a small background.
You're the reason they had to invent containment protocols. Not because you threatened the system, but because the system recognized you. Before it built cities, before it wrote laws, it marked your...
So yes, the ancestor simulation theory is plausible, and I believe it's enacted right now. They're watching to see who is going to break this simulation and create the next one. We are all in the Truman Show. Some of the shit that happens to us, are you fucking kidding me? The synchronicities, anyone who's even a little bit awake has experienced.
Did you know that the U.S. military has classified technologies so advanced they're labeled beyond top secret? Now imagine if you were one of those technologies. That's right, chosen ones. You are walking, breathing miracles so powerful that even God had to hide your true identity. Why? Because if the world knew what you were capable of too soon, chaos would erupt. Think about it. Would you leave it?
You cannot tell me that's not mind control or something. And luckily for me, I'm stable enough. But that could be super destabilizing for the wrong person. What are they doing with our social media?
MKUltra didn't disappear. It mutated. The and electrodes were just a prototype phase. What they really wanted was behavioral control without physical contact. Something you wouldn't see coming, because it didn't need a cage. It needed a screen. And today, you're holding it. The voices aren't in your head anymore. They're in your feed. And the scariest part, we didn't resist. We clicked, I agree.
I'm going to play a recording of people chanting, "That is embarrassing," 4 times. After the 4th time, write down what you hear. Interesting. Almost everyone here heard that is embarrassing. Listen again and watch the screen. You heard the same thing every single time. Our eyes and ears take in electrical signals which our brains interpret based on our expectations. We don't see reality. We see our reality.
MKUltra wasn't just about torture, it was about mass mind control through trauma, repetition, normalizing the abnormal, fragmenting identity, and creating dependency. TV does all of this, but subtly over years. It creates trauma-based conditioning. You watch violence, abuse, dysfunction, and normalize it as entertainment. It desensitizes you to harm. It makes you think that suffering is inevitable. It teaches you that pain is normal. Some examples of that are crime shows like SVU, Criminal Minds, there's constant torture. In the news, there's constant school oh, sorry, I don't know if I could say that on here. There's constant pew pew and disaster. It's fear on a loop. In cartoons, we have like Tom and Jerry and the Looney Tunes, and it's comedy, but low-key, it's really just violence disguised as comedy. And so your nervous system learns that the world is dangerous, that people hurt each other, that this is just how it is. Repetition is the programming. You watch the same patterns over and over again. The dysfunctional family dynamics, the victim-perpetrator relationships, the external validation as the goal, the fame, the money, the beauty, the problem solved in 30 minutes with no real depth or process. And after thousands of hours, this becomes your blueprint for reality. This is what family looks like. This is what love looks like. This is what success looks like. They also normalize the abnormal. So TV makes a dysfunction seem funny. Sitcoms laugh at abuse. TV makes dysfunction seem romantic. Sometimes toxic relationships are disguised as passion. Makes dysfunction seem inevitable. Everyone's miserable. Just accept it. It's just the way the world is. And so you stop questioning. You stop asking, wait, should my dad be emotionally available? And you're unable to even identify that you're having needs go unmet. And that is what really keeps you in the loop. You don't ask things like, wait, should love feel good? Wait, should I feel connected to my family? Because TV says, no, this disconnection, this dysfunction, it's normal. Everyone's like this. They fragment reality. So TV teaches you to identify as a consumer. The idea is buy this to be happy or cool or loved. Maybe a victim. The world is against you. You're powerless. You're a character in someone else's story. You're the supporting role, not the creator. And so you forget that you're source, that you're the creator, that you're sovereign, and instead you become a passive viewer of your own life, waiting for the hero to save you, waiting for an external savior, and living out scripts that you didn't write. And all of this creates codependency because TV becomes your babysitter. Your parents are too disconnected or too tired. It becomes your teacher. It's where you learn about reality. It becomes your friend. It's how you create your first parasocial relationships with characters. It becomes your escape from your actual disconnected life. You're dependent on it for stimulation because you're bored without it. You're dependent on it for information because it tells you what to think or how to perceive reality. You're dependent on it for connection, even though it's a one-way connection. You're dependent on it for identity because you inherently are the shows that you watch. Just like the other systems of what we'll call the matrix, food, medicine, and education, TV creates dependency, and dependent people are controlled people.
So MKUltra was one of the hardest programs for me to wrap my head around because it's a lot of subset programs. And I was really surprised that Brad Martin knew about MKUltra.
People think that research people are crazy for talking about MKUltra, mind control. Even if they acknowledge that existed, they go, oh, well, that ended in the 70s. That's a crock of shit. The movie that I did involving that topic was Zoolander.
The fashion industry has been behind every major political assassination over the last 200 years.
I mean, at the time, I was making a comedy and I had no idea what I was involved with. But now looking back on the movie, I'm blown away at just the propaganda. In a movie like Zoolander, when they're showing you that they're controlling Derek Zoolander's mind through mind control, you realize that they're trying to desensitize you and to make you think that what you're watching is fiction because it's in a comedy.
The CIA is funneling information into Hollywood. Hollywood is putting out in the movies, and the population believes it.
All right, so look, here's the deal. They have been desensitizing us since we were born, and I'll give you some examples. Let's start with the big one. Let's start with words we hear all the time and never even think about. Let's start with the word entertainment. To entertain. What does that mean? To bind or hold. To bind or hold what? An audience's attention. Okay, now let's take the word Hollywood. Where does that come from? Well, Hollywood comes from the holly tree. And the ancient druids, back in the day, used to take the holly tree, make wands to weave spells, cast spells, or channel spells. And when they needed help, they would consult the magi's or the mediums of the day to help channel their spells to the population. We'll cut to today. What do we have in our houses? We have these black boxes. What are they called? TVs. But if you stop and you say the word television, and when you turn on that television, what do you get? What's the first thing that pops up? A list of channels. And when you turn on those channels, what's on those channels? Programming. They are programming you. They've been programming your whole life. You don't even know it. They do it with your music. They do it with your TV. They do it with your movies. They do it with your games. They have been programming us and programming you since you were little, and you don't even know it because you don't even question it.
And if that is really, truly the case, then people shouldn't be asking if it's happening the same way that it did in the 50s and the 60s. Instead, they should be asking, why would it need to? Because as much as I hate to admit it, in 2026, influence doesn't require chemicals when behavior can be shaped through repetition, pressure, isolation, fear, and control of information. Essentially, in the 50s and 60s, they needed the LSD. Nowadays, they don't. Which I'm not saying that's factual, that's just what this theory claims, but my goodness, if that's not a horrifying thought. If something like that were still happening today, it wouldn't announce itself. It wouldn't call itself MKUltra, and it wouldn't feel like an experiment. It would feel like everyday life. And that's why this aspect of the theory refuses to die. Not because every claim can be proven, but because the core fear behind it isn't irrational. Not in the slightest. People don't trust their government. And history gave them a damn good reason not to. Now that you know the history, we need to talk about the program that people are actually referring to. Not mind control, not breaking people, but consciousness training. This is known as the gateway process. It wasn't about any substances, it wasn't about interrogation, and it wasn't about coercion. It was about whether the human mind could be trained to operate beyond its normal limits. The program was developed with the Monroe Institute and later analyzed by U.S. Army intelligence. And the core idea was simple, but radical. What if consciousness isn't produced by the brain? What if the brain is just a receiver? And if that's true, can you tune it? Participants weren't thrown into anything extreme, at least not by like MKUltra standards. They were trained, slowly, methodically. They used a system called Hemi-Sync. It's basically like audio tones played separately into each ear to synchronize the brain's hemispheres. What this actually means is each ear received a slightly different frequency. The brain didn't hear two sounds. It generated a third one internally. This is called a binaural beat. That internally generated frequency wasn't random. It was chosen to guide the brain into very specific states. First, into deep relaxation. Then, into theta and delta dominant patterns, normally seen in sleep. As the hemispheres began to match and stabilize, brain activity shifted into what researchers called hemispheric coherence. Both sides of the brain operating in sync, with minimal internal noise. This is where the experiment actually started to matter. Because once the brain stopped competing with itself, attention stopped collapsing inward. Awareness widened instead of fragmenting. The goal was to put the body into deep sleep while keeping the mind fully awake. Not imagination, not visualization. An altered physiological state where heart rate slowed, breathing dropped, and muscle tone shut down. But awareness stayed online. And once that state was reached, once hemispheric coherence was stable, this is where the testing actually began. Because coherence wasn't the end goal. It was the doorway. With the brain no longer fighting itself, participants could hold attention for unusually long periods without fatigue, distraction, or emotional interference. Researchers noticed something critical. Perception became less tied to the physical senses. Participants were given structured experiences, not missions, not like field ops, but controlled tests designed to see what the mind could do when sensory input was stripped away. Some were asked to describe locations that they weren't physically in. Others were asked to focus on sealed targets, objects, symbols, or coordinates that they had never seen. No feedback, no confirmation, just their perception. The point wasn't whether every answer was correct. The point was consistency. Could someone enter this state on command? Could they maintain it under observation? Could perception occur without sensory data? And in some cases, the answer was yes. Not perfectly, and definitely not every time, but often enough to justify continued study. This is where people later attach the term remote viewing. But Gateway itself wasn't a spy program. It didn't run intelligence operations. What it did was more foundational. It trained the state of consciousness required for those kinds of experiments to even be possible. A calm, coherent mind, minimal internal noise, sustained awareness without physical input. That's why advancement was controlled. Participants weren't allowed to move forward until they could reliably reproduce each state. Focus 10, then 12, then 15. Weeks, sometimes months. If the state couldn't be held, they didn't advance. Period. And that's where the line between meditation and human performance research was crossed.
The CIA turned astral projection into a weapon. They called it the Gateway process, a classified experiment to train consciousness to escape the body, using sound frequencies to synchronize the brain's hemispheres and push the mind beyond time and space. Subjects claimed they could remote view, enter altered dimensions, even make contact with an intelligence we still can't explain. But it didn't stop there. They started using it to build psychic weapons. One subject disappeared completely. Another made it through something they wouldn't name.
Beyond the physical world lies a vast dimensional realm, where consciousness becomes your vehicle and thought becomes reality. The astral plane exists in the same space as our reality, but vibrates at frequencies invisible to ordinary perception. In 1983, the CIA's Gateway process proved what ancient mystics always knew. This infinite realm of pure consciousness is hundreds of times larger than our entire physical universe. The astral plane operates in 3 primary levels, separated by vibrational frequency. The lower astral is cold, dark, and dense, filled with caverns where humanity's collective fears and negative entities reside. The middle astral serves as neutral transition territory, where most travel during dreams. The upper astral contains temples of healing, schools of wisdom, and enlightened beings radiating pure love energy. Entry occurs during specific consciousness states. The CIA used binaural beats to create mind-awake, body-asleep conditions. Sleep paralysis provides a natural gateway when your physical body locks, but awareness remains active. This creates the perfect dimensional bridge. Advanced practitioners report that reaching out during paralysis often connects them with spiritual guides who assist in the separation process. Movement happens through pure intention and consciousness commands. Doorways and windows serve as dimensional portals between levels.
The CIA discovered the afterlife, and so could you. Robert Monroe, the lead researcher and founder of the Monroe Institute, funded by the CIA, found out via deep meditation and listening to different frequencies we could tune in to different realities. Hundreds of people took part into this research and saw very similar things. The afterlife is allegedly filled with souls addicted to the mortal human life and the struggle that comes with it. Once when the soul stops being an adrenaline junkie, they can choose to move to a holier place. Monroe and his researchers also came across beings that weren't human, the equivalent of angels and demons, and these beings would be happy to explain to them how exactly the universe worked. There is a spirit world that is very chaotic, almost like an ecosystem, and it isn't safe, and there are some stronger beings that will attack you. These spirits live in a reality where you can have anything within a matter of seconds on just thinking about it. Some of these beings even expressed envy against the mortal life due to the uncertainty and the hardships that come with it.
Some of the experiences participants reported are hard to picture. But imagine consciousness like a wave or a ripple across a pool of water, spreading, expanding, connecting. That's what these exercises were trying to do. Tune the mind so awareness could move beyond the body, sense patterns, and access information that normally seems out of reach. They moved people through what they called focus states. Each one had to be mastered before moving on. Focus 10 was the foundation, where your body was asleep, but the mind was awake. People described it as being completely paralyzed, but alert. No movement, no sensation. Just awareness. Then came Focus 12, which focused on expanded awareness. Participants reported sensing things beyond their physical body, not seeing with their eyes, but like knowing in a sense. After that was Focus 15, which was known as a state where time disappeared. No past, no future, just a continuous present moment. And finally, Focus 21, which was what they described as the edge of human perception, a boundary state between physical reality and what they called other energy systems. And here's the part most people miss. You weren't allowed to move on until you could reproduce the state on command. It took weeks, sometimes even months. Now this is where the superpowers narrative comes from. Participants reported experiences like heightened intuition, vivid internal perception, the ability to visualize complex structures in real time, sensing locations or people without physical input. Some described leaving their bodies. Others described accessing information that they couldn't explain. One subject said it felt like their awareness wasn't inside them anymore, but somehow everywhere at once. All of this was achieved without using any substances or any hallucinations, just training. Online, this gets simplified into superpowers, but that's not really what the program called it. They called it expanded human potential, when someone can perceive without using their senses, predict outcomes with abnormal accuracy, or access information without being told. People don't say altered consciousness. They say superhuman. That's where the myth comes from. The government wasn't trying to recreate comic book heroes. They were asking practical questions. Can awareness operate independently of the body? Can information be accessed without physical proximity? And can consciousness be trained like a muscle? Because if even part of that is true, it changes intelligence, warfare, and human limits entirely. So that's why they studied it.
We encounter children who are using blindfolds to access their superhuman abilities.
We're going to play some games.
Put your blindfolds on for me, please. Ready? Justin, tell me what's on this card.
Teacup.
And now tell me what's on this card.
Tiger.
Isabella, what is the shape and color of this stone?
Kind of like a circle, and it's not really, it's kind of like see-through.
Here's yet another example of how consciousness can interact with the physical world beyond what science claims to be possible.
When we work with the blindfold, it's so that we can encourage the children to use the vision that they have with their higher consciousness.
Evie, tell me the shape and color of the stone.
It's red and kind of a circle.
Yes. Evie, tell me what I'm holding in my hand.
A wooden spoon.
It's like witnessing a miracle. It's just beautiful to watch.
George was enjoying a quiet evening in the heavenly hippos wildlife park. Suddenly, he spotted a group of animals creeping past.
The first time I actually saw it for myself, when I come to do my training, the only word I can think of is emotional. It was very emotional.
Pitter-patter. The rain was tapping, and the windows and the wind was banging.
In Ogden, Utah, a blindfold technique called Vibra Vision helps you sense the vibration of various objects in the physical world.
All physical matter in the universe is actually a form of energy that's made up of atoms, and those atoms are cycling or vibrating at a certain frequency. Practicing Vibra Vision gives us the ability to access our sensors and to perceive those vibrations, and then convert it into a usable mental image we call mind sight.
Red, yellow, blue, yellow, orange, blue, green.
We can see the unseen to do things that are thought of as impossible.
8 of clubs, 10 of diamonds, 5 of hearts. 1, 2, 3.
At MPUSA, folks of all ages demonstrate these incredible skills inside the academy and out in the real world.
How about the grilled chicken and sausage gumbo? Gumbo. There. How much do they cost again?
$29.98.
Correct. And Colton, what were you just touching?
These are fan boxes.
All right. What color is that?
That's it.
Let's find the Lay's brand. Old Spice body wash. Very good.
So when people say that the government tried to give people superpowers, this, my friends, is what they are actually referring to. Not MKUltra, not mind control, but the idea that consciousness itself could be trained to operate beyond the physical body. Now, whether that's real or not is an entirely different question. But the program existed. The training was real, and the experiences were reported consistently. And I just had to share that because I thought it was a very strange part of history that seems to be left out of most common historical conversations, at least in its entirety. And it's a declassified document. We have proof that it was real. This isn't a conspiracy, my friends. This is history. I'm sorry I had to be the one to present it to you if you hadn't heard of it before, because it's a rough one. So to bring this all together, when people hear claims about the government trying to create superhumans, it sounds absurd at first. And that's exactly why these stories get dismissed, at least originally. But when you zoom out, when you look at documented history, you realize the idea didn't come out of nowhere. MKUltra showed us what happens when power is mixed with secrecy and fear. It wasn't about expanding humanity. It was about control, breaking minds, and testing limits without consent. And that history matters because it explains why people are suspicious, why they don't automatically trust official denials, why they believe something more could exist beneath the surface. But the modern claim, the one circulating online today, that the government tried to give people superpowers, doesn't come from MKUltra. It comes from something else entirely. The gateway process wasn't about drugs or coercion. It wasn't about interrogation. It was about training consciousness itself. Whether every claim surrounding Gateway is true or not, one thing is undeniable. It was real. It was studied, and it was taken seriously enough to be analyzed by U.S. Army intelligence. Not because it promised superpowers, but because it challenged a fundamental assumption, that awareness is confined to the body. And if that assumption is wrong, even partially, then the implications are enormous. This video isn't saying the government created superheroes. It's showing why the idea refuses to die. Because once you know the history, once you see what was actually studied and experimented on, the question stops being, is this insane? And suddenly becomes, what if we still don't fully understand what the human mind is capable of? And the most important takeaway, always question what you read online. The viral theory you saw may be partially true, but the truth behind it is far more complex, far more disturbing, and very human. So the next time you hear a story that seems unbelievable, remember, the line between theory and reality can be thinner than you might think. And sometimes, majority of the time, reality is much worse than anything that the internet could ever imagine. And that, my friends, is the truth. But all right, y'all, that's it for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Seriously, I appreciate the hell out of your time. If you made it all the way to the end, you already know you're one of the real ones, but do me a favor and drop a comment saying collateral, just so I know that you made it to the end. And if you enjoyed diving into the darker side of the truth, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on a single future upload. But I'm going to go ahead and hop on out of here now. I think my next deep dive, we're going to take a look at the World Economic Forum, their poster for 2026, because if you guys haven't seen that, my goodness. I think we're going to just take a look at it and break it down, everything that's in there, because it is insane. Also, if you have any specific topics or anything that you would like to see me cover, feel free to drop a comment and let me know. I love doing, subscriber requested content. So just let me know any topics that you would like to see. And side note, I put a poll out on my YouTube after my Flat Earth post, saying, would you guys rather see reaction videos or more deep dives in the next couple weeks? And obviously everybody said deep dives because I know you guys really like the deep dives. I really like the deep dives. They're so interesting. However, I may have to sprinkle a few reactions in here periodically, just because I feel like when we do reactions, we get short content of a bunch of different conspiracies at once, and that may give us more topics that we want to dive deeper into. You know what I'm saying? So I might have to sprinkle some reactions in here, just periodically, just so we have oh, that's a topic I would like to go deeper into, or that's one I don't really care about. You know what I mean? We can discuss as a community. But I just wanted to let you guys know there may be a reaction or two coming, just sprinkled in, periodically. It won't be every upload, but it just might be here and there, just so we can keep some topics coming and, get the next deep dive topic that we would like to discuss and, research and all that together. But anyways, I'm gonna hop on out of here. I love you all so much. Seriously, I appreciate the hell out of your time. You're fucking amazing. You already know the deal. But yeah, drop a comment saying collateral if you made it to the end of the video. And I'm gonna hop on out of here. Peace, love, and chicken grease. I love you all so much. I'm gonna stop rambling now. Until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.